Saturdays, Entertainment Fridays. Just so you know, it's 5 p.m. We're going live now. Just so you know, till 6, don't touch the dial, go. Just so you know, it's 5 p.m. We're going live now. Just so you know, till 6, don't touch the dial, go. Youth Block of the Year, catch us everywhere. Hashtag line EKSE, kuzofiwa this year. Youth Block of the Year, catch us everywhere. Hashtag line EKSE, kuzofiwa this year.
Welcome to Scientific Wednesday right here on channel 263. Man, you are tuned into EKSE, the best show in the motherland of Mzansi right now. My name is EKSE. Of course, Digami Tihara holding it down for the hour from 5 till 6 p.m. And today we are talking about all things load shedding, how it is impacting people and the community of South Africa in and around right here. So if you are wanting to know more, please do stay tuned. We are chatting to energy analyst as well as energy advisor. You do not want to miss that conversation. After that, I'll be jumping through with Pedro, the rapper who is owning the music space right now. But right now, let's go over to Yin and Yang, Miklali and Lauren.
Rialebucha Kiza for welcoming us to the show. As Kiza has mentioned, Namhlanje is Scientific Wednesday, and we really do want to get into the conversation of the energy crisis that we're currently experiencing up in Mzansi. Now, we do know that when we speak about load shedding, Lauren, a lot of South Africans just want to leave the group chat because we're so tired of the effects that load shedding has on our daily lives. And ESCOM being one of the country's largest energy suppliers, you know, it has been triggering and scheduling blackouts for the longest of time. It's close to 15 years now.
Can you believe it's 15 years?
What is going on? What is going on? What needs to be done, and why is it going so wrong?
You know, it's one of those things where I think we were discussing it off camera before the show started. Can you believe it that load shedding by ESCOM is considered a temporary solution? And that's something we're going to get into today. But we are joined in studio by Argan Puran, an energy analyst from Green Cape, as well as Senamile Sishi, an energy advisor from Sustainable Energy Africa, a company that promotes the development of an equitable, low-carbon, clean energy economy throughout urban South Africa. But guys, if you have any questions about the current energy crisis, comment on our Facebook page, EKSE Live. We definitely want to hear from you. And let's just keep this chat going live as well.
Most definitely. Just to start off a conversation, Arga, maybe let's come to you. Why are we experiencing an energy crisis in South Africa? And maybe perhaps for people that do not know how energy is created, how not energy necessarily, but electricity, how is it created?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I think it's important for us to think about what do we mean when we talk about an energy crisis, right? And normally we mean that why am I paying more for electricity and why do I not have electricity when I need it? And there are two facets to that. So firstly, our national utility ESCOM is in 400 billion rand of debt that it needs to service every year. So think about the interest on that it pays. Secondly, based on what the utility can supply, we've got a certain amount, 53 gigawatts. Most of that is coal, but only 50% of that coal can deliver the energy that it's supposed to, which means there's a huge gap in the energy that's needed versus the energy that can be supplied, which is why we have load shedding. And in order to provide some power during load shedding periods, the utility has to run diesel open cycle gas turbines, which is very expensive, and that also contributes to the rising cost of electricity.
I read an article, I think, yesterday, the mentioning of diesel and how we're not going to be able to get it into the country, I think, like June of next year, and I was like, I'm tapping out. We should all just leave at this point. But, you know, coming to you, it's one of those things, like I was mentioning, ESCOM says that load shedding is a temporary solution, but I don't know if we can still say temporary after 15 years sort of in the making. So can you tell us what are the main causes of that sort of electricity deficit in South Africa? Can you explain it, sort of adding on to what Argon was saying?
Sure. So Argon was 100% right in everything that he said. And I think there have been quite a few problems with ESCOM that has led to now how load shedding has been. In 2022, we've experienced the most load shedding ever. So basically, what ESCOM needs to do is that, first of all, ESCOM is not able to properly service or maintain their power plants. And that also creates a huge problem because we're not able to get enough electricity. And also, if you look at the energy availability factor, which is the amount of electricity that can be supplied by a plant, it is going down more than it was predicted to, and there's not enough renewable energy on the grid to be able to meet the demands that South Africans have. So I think that's the main problem with the electricity crisis.
And most definitely, load shedding has impacted almost everyone, and even not just almost, each and every single
Literally
person
everybody.
in South Africa.
Generator or no generator.
You understand, and it goes on for like more than 4 hours, 5 hours per day, and you're imagining, you're thinking to yourself, how are people expected to live within those hours? What are we supposed to do when we do not have electricity? Why do you think ESCOM is failing to sustain its energy supply to South Africans?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has been poor planning. And to some degree poor governance. We have what is called the Renewable Energy Independent Power Procurement Program. So that's the main program by which we get new renewable energy onto the grid. How that is done is there's tenders that go out and people have to bid, and then there's sort of a long process of accepting those bids. There was a long break between 2016, 2018, where the bids weren't, the rounds weren't happening. Some studies have shown that because of that delay in getting that capacity onto the grid, we now see the load shedding because the supply gap is around 4 to 6 gigawatts. We could have bridged that gap with that renewable power that could have been installed in that time.
So I'm definitely and clearly not an expert the way you two are in the field of energy and electricity, but I do understand that the main source of our energy is coal, right? But apparently at COP26, when I know they discuss a lot of the sort of energy and environmental problems of the world, one of the things they committed to was using less coal. So how do we sort of navigate that in the grander scheme when the world is trying to use less coal, but South Africa is using the main source as coal?
Yeah, absolutely. So with coal, it is the most carbon intensive energy source out there. So it is very important that we move away from coal in order to be more sustainable in our energy in South Africa. And so I think because South Africa has ratified the Paris Agreement and the COP26, we've been signing a lot of ratifications to be able to move away from coal, and so it's important for us to move away from coal, and the way that we can do that is by encouraging renewable energy to go into the grid. So what he was talking about, the renewable energy power procurement program, is very important, and that time that was lost there, it is very important to pick it up. And now we are seeing some red tapes within policies being lifted, so we are hoping to see more renewable energy coming onto the grid, as well as when it comes to municipalities, they need to be able to accept renewable energy that is being fed back into the grid by people that have solar power on their roofs.
Man, you know what? This conversation, we could go on and on the whole day, but
Forever.
we're definitely going to continue this conversation after the ad break. But before we go to the ad break, we have EKSE that is on standby with our social media question for the day. We want to know, how does electricity and load shedding affect you on a daily basis? I know that for a student, for one, I remember when I was writing, Lauren, there was a period where electricity just went out and I had to write an exam. And we're doing online learning now, so I don't have physical, I don't have the
Especially with
luxury.
COVID,
I
online is
I
where
need
it's at.
Wi-Fi, I need to charge my laptop, and I could not do any of those things because there was load shedding.
And the reality is, we were saying something earlier as well, is it's so difficult to get South Africans to care about what's happening in the environment and what's happening with energy when so many people are struggling to put food on the table, are struggling to get jobs. So we're going to keep the conversation going, but right now EKSE is in the house again to tell us a little bit about what's up.
Certainly very, very interesting topic coming through right there in the lounge with Lauren and Mihlali. Load shedding impacting and affecting everyone in and around South Africa as well as the community. So guys, if you have people that are not tuned into this conversation, please do get your neighbors, get your family, get everyone, let them know that it's going down on EKSE channel 263, as well as hit us up rather on our social media pages, letting us know what are you doing during load shedding, how are you keeping yourself busy, how are you keeping yourself entertained. Let us know on social media as we take a young breather, and we'll be back with more of the conversation after this. Do not go anywhere.
We are still here with our amazing guests chatting about energy and what their organizations are doing to drive that environment conversation throughout South Africa as well. Welcome back again, guys. We know that we had a very interesting conversation right now, but we've got some more to chat about as well.
Yes, most definitely. And this conversation is nothing without your voice. So please make sure that you're hitting us up on all of our social media platforms. Let us know what you think about the topic of the day. If you have any questions that you'd like to pose to our guests, please make sure that you're engaging with us, because our social media question of the day is, do you think that ESCOM is doing enough to prevent and stop load shedding? Personally, I do not think so. I don't know what
I feel
you
like
think,
that question's going to start a riot. It's going to start a complete...
Rightfully so.
I mean, let's talk more about renewable energy, right?
Yeah.
And other energy sources. What would you say are the best options of renewable energy in South Africa?
So our best resources are definitely solar and wind. So
That
South
makes
Africa has some of the best solar and wind resources in the world. And on the recent Renewable Energy Independent Power Procurement, REAP for short, bid windows, solar and wind are coming in at around 40 to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's just to say it's a lot cheaper than coal right now. So in the first bid windows, the price was a bit higher. Over time, it's become cheaper than coal. So that's why we are advocating coal or advocating solar and wind as a least cost path.
And just to stick on that, because you do mention that there are other alternative energy sources that we can make use of. Why do you think that South Africa has not transitioned into making use of those renewable energy sources?
Do you want to take that one?
Of course. Well, I think the main thing has been around policy, because there hasn't been enough policy to be able to help the private sector move into renewable energy. So there's been a bit of fluctuation. Sometimes the policy is favorable and then the politics happens and then, it goes back. So now, because of the energy crisis and how it's impacting the economy, we can see that policies are starting to open up. Like, for example, they've lifted the license of having to have a license to produce more than 1 megawatt of power. So now it's up to 100 megawatts, which is great. So I think policy is the main thing.
So you're talking a lot about the red tape drama, as we all know, in every sector. What would you say if there's somebody watching right now who's saying, I want to shift to renewable energy in my household? Where does one start as an individual and as a family? And what does that mean financially and logistically?
So I think the first thing to think about is, what is the most important in terms of what I need power for in my household? Because there's different sort of capital investment costs for different things, right? So if you're looking at something just to keep the Wi-Fi on to do work, you're probably looking at a UPS that will cost you maybe between 1,000 to 2,000 rand. If you're looking at, okay, I also need to get maybe an appliance with that Wi-Fi or a computer with that Wi-Fi, you may be looking at a bit more, maybe 2,000, 3,000 rand. If you want even more than that, maybe you need to have your fridge going. Probably looking at a diesel generator, probably around 4,000 rand or more. Then you can start looking at hot water. So something like a solar geyser, it's probably going to cost you around 20,000 rand. If you want to go the route of approaching a solar provider, the standard that they would offer a residential user is a 5 kilowatt peak, so that's sort of the size of the solar system, and 5 kilowatt hours. So important to understand that a solar system alone won't shield you from load shedding. You also need something to store that power so that you can use it when the sun isn't going. That will probably cost you around 140 to 200,000 rand. And what's really important with that is you need to approach reliable installers that can give you a quality product.
That know what they're doing.
And we've been doing a lot of work with SAPFIA, which is the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association, which has a list on their website, green card approved installers that have gone through certain certifications to make sure that you're getting a good service. So I would definitely recommend going to that list if you're asking, who do I go to for solar?
And I think it's very clear that a lot of adjustments have to be made us on citizens, and of course just, you know, as a national responsibility as well. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Maybe coming to you, Sinamile, what do you think, what are the predictions when it comes to the future of the South African energy crisis?
To be honest with you, at the moment, it doesn't look too good. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. So we're still going to experience load shedding until we are able to bring enough power to be able to supply the demand that there is for electricity. So I think now that there's a lot more renewable projects going on, I think that is going to increase the amount of renewable energy on the grid. But also, if you're looking at ESCOM, the coal-fired power stations are also really going, quite badly. There's not enough maintenance, and they're reaching the end of their life. So the renewable energy really has to come on at a massive scale, and that's what we try to do at Sustainable Energy Africa. We try to facilitate that with municipalities to be able to allow embedded generators to feed back into the grid with their solar power.
Sure. Thank you so much again to our guests for joining us today, having that very, very dense but important conversation. The South African economy has been in steady decline over recent years, unfortunately, and it's caused in no small part by load shedding and ESCOM's unreliable power supply. The government cannot achieve an effective solution on its own, which means a combination of private and public sector involvement is what is required to rid South Africa of its energy crisis. So it's one of those things where, you know, if you're sitting at home, I've taken away some things from what you guys have said, even though I know that I'm very out of my depth here discussing electricity, discussing energy, but it's so important to just, you know, stay involved.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for us to have these conversations, Lauren, because this is something that we all experience on a daily basis,
100%.
you know, so we need to be informed about what's happening in South Africa, really need to grow and build a nation that is conscious about, you know, some of the socio-economic issues that we are a part of, so that when it comes to policy developments and having to develop policy, we have people that are going to be able to engage on those problems, because we are the people on the ground, we are the people that experience, you know, load shedding, we are the people that know the effects that load shedding has rather on our lives. So it's very good for us to be informed about this and to drive more of these conversations, so that, you know, even organizations that want to reach out to communities and maybe like try and help, you know, navigate or mitigate the problems that we're facing, to also have a ground standing for that.
It's interesting, I was just thinking now about how you sort of touched on the red tape and the public sector, and you touched on things, even though 1,000 Rand is a lot for a lot of South Africans, you can do something at home from as little as 1,000 Rand to as much as, you know, 20,000, 30,000 Rand. So it's definitely something to take home.